Yeah. So I was being facetious there. Remember, this is a comedy show, and that comedy that you just heard from Russell Brand is going to be followed up maybe with some comedy from our next guest. We have a guest in studio tonight, not in studio, but here in the Zoom room for your studio. His name is Benjamin Wallace Wills. Benny, did I get your middle name right?
That's my middle name. Yes, it's Wallace.
Oh, and did you get a haircut since I last saw you on the Meme Monday?
I got them all cut.
Oh,
Yes,
he's
I
funny
did.
man, funny man. So that helps to hold the reputation that this is a comedy show and we should not be held liable for things that are said in the search for truth. How you doing tonight, Benny?
I'm good. I'm good. We are wrestling with a lot. I was able to get my older son down for bed just now in the 10 minutes that I've been waiting to come on here, which is quite an accomplishment, really, to get him in a new diaper, in his jams, brush his teeth, get him his milk, and in bed in 10 minutes is proof that our parenting is working pretty efficiently at this point.
Well, that's good. I'm glad I gave you an extra 10 minutes to get that done. Now you can have
I needed it. It was a late night. He's usually in bed by 6:30 and it's 7:30. So we have company over. So things were a bit delayed.
Oh, for sure. It's always fun having other people around making noise when you're trying to do quiet like Zoom meetings. Now I noticed a new background. You got is that a Zoom background difference or is that like a real difference in the background?
This is a new background. There is no background right now because we just moved into this house. But this is our new house. This is my new office, and the background is still being figured out.
Right on, man. Well, how'd the move go? Was it like very stressful? You obviously didn't tear your hair out. You did well with that.
Moving is stressful, period. So this one was, I guess, by the book, stressful. But the more frustrating aspect is that we're trying to sell the property we're moving from, and we're having a really difficult time doing that. So the moving process this time, while unfortunate and annoying, wasn't so bad. It's just there's like an existential anxiety about a property that we're still paying for that we can't sell at the moment that is making things interesting.
Well, maybe there's someone in the audience who wants to move to northern Idaho. Hit Benny up after the show.
It's funny you say that because I'm actually going to talk about it on my meme show tomorrow as well. If anybody's looking for a 10-acre homestead property in North Idaho, complete with a 2021 build new house, it's a 3-2, and a second house that is ready, it's move-in ready for renters at the very least, and we have another dwelling on top of a shed, an RV spot. We have well water, septic. We are wanting to sell. If you're thinking of moving to Idaho, reach out. If you're thinking of being a homesteader on 10 acres, reach out to me.
Benny at bennywills.com. All right.
So that's not why I'm here, but I am.
That's not, I know, but I just figured two birds with one stone.
Everybody right now.
People like, rural Idaho.
It's a good property. It's just not,
a hot spot.
It's for a long story. It's not for us.
Yeah. All right. So you're in your new spot. You got your regular Monday show, Meme Monday. For people who aren't familiar with your work, you worked, 10 years with Joy Camp, the comedy troupe?
Not quite 10 years. I mean, we did consistent content for about 6 years. I mean, it still exists, so it's been around for 10 years. But yeah, Joy Camp was kind of what launched me into, I don't know, this scene and having speaking about my opinions and what I think. And we did it from 2012 to 2016, really. And then I moved from Los Angeles, and then I've kind of been on a solo kick ever since. And yeah, I host a meme show every Monday, and people seem to like it. It documents the times pretty well in a hilarious way. And yeah, I'm a father of two. That's my main thing really right now.
Well, in memes is a good way to spend like your hobby time on Monday nights, right? It's like there's not a whole lot else going on Mondays. Every time I see yours come up in the YouTube feed, I mark it like remind me for later. And the wife and I, we enjoy the memes at the end of the week. And it's interesting also to think about the memes that have progressed in the last couple of years, especially since COVID. It's been like hot for meme season. So there's a lot of juicy memes out there. And you are always trying to get the show done quick. And I'm like, bro, we want to see more memes. Like, are there more? And you do have a way people can get the archive and stuff like that. But I enjoy the live show. I enjoy the commentary. And I like the archive aspect of like preserving a week of memes from history, because it does tell you a lot about what's going on at the time and how people feel about it. by the memes that are collected by the net you put out there to catch them, right?
Absolutely. Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, and I actually didn't realize the significance potentially of the show itself until I did my best memes of 2021 at the beginning of this year. When I did that show and I looked at all the memes from the previous 12 months, I was like, wow, I'm really documenting the times, like in real time. Not only documenting, but because the news cycle just churns out news, I'm capturing all the little bits that come and go. And it's right there in real time. And yeah, it is an archive for the times we're living in right now, at least for the last 2 years. So it's a cool thing for me because it's fun, and it's cool for people because they get basically 100 memes from me at a time, and they're good memes. And it documents the time in a hilarious way because you have to laugh at the ridiculousness of life and what we're going through right now.
All right. Well, one of the ways that you traditionally have made people laugh was a character you have with Joy Camp called the Conspiracy Guy. And can you explain to the audience who maybe haven't seen it, because it's like, you don't know whether it's to take you seriously or if there's some sarcasm woven with some wisdom in there. Like, what was your formula or recipe to come up with those skits?
Yeah. So actually, no, it's not true. The main recurring character on the Joy Camp channel was the Conspiracy Guy, and it was a mockery of myself. And it was never intended to be a character. It was intended to be a one-off video. We had a video called Conspiracy Guy Chemtrails that a lot of people I think have seen who maybe know who I am right now. They're like, hey, he looks kind of familiar. They probably know me from that video because that was a really popular video. And we did it as a one-off, and it was received so well, and it was such a simple formula that we decided to keep doing it. And it became, I don't know, almost like the main thing that Joy Camp produced was these Conspiracy Guy videos. But yeah, it was a mockery of myself because, when I first started questioning things in the early 2000s, because what I was uncovering was so important, I was really passionate about the way I explained it to people. And I ended up being that conspiracy guy, the turd in the punch bowl, the guy who could like kill the mood and ruin the vibe of a party because I was so intent on, telling people what was really going on. And only through that experience, kind of, I don't say embarrassing myself, but realizing that I was not doing I wasn't being helpful. I wasn't honoring the truth by doing that. And I was able to laugh at myself. And then we created Joy Camp, and I created the character of just making fun of the way I used to be, which is this guy who just kills the vibe with truth bombs.
Yeah, the way I kind of see it is people are thirsty and you're trying to purvey them water, but instead of like giving it to them in cups or pitchers, you're like using a high-powered squirt gun and you're like spraying stuff at people who aren't ready to receive it. Right. And that's
Exactly.
I think it's a common phase. The reason I bring it up is common phase and people learning things outside of that mass media matrix of Muppets that we've been looking at, the Swiss research map. Because once you get, okay, so these people aren't telling me the truth and the whole truth, nothing but the truth. There's these other things. And then it's like all over the place. It's like the Wild West. And you have to learn how to discern. And so the phase that people go through is they discover this and they got to tell everybody else as soon as you find out, right? And that goes on maybe a couple of years. And if you're lucky, you still have some friends and family that'll talk to you when you get out of that phase. And then people can hear the facts because you know how to present them more. You know how to ask questions to get them to ask the questions along with you. And you're not so much trying to come at them like this, but you're coming in on a tangent instead of a direct line. So you're like, it's more eloquent, both, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it makes sense that we approach it like that initially because it is, in essence, it's an acknowledgement of evil. The more we go down the rabbit hole, it's like accepting that things are as bad as possibly you feared they were. And that's scary. And it's once you start tugging on that thread, the whole sweater starts coming undone and you want to let people know because your life is at stake. But then when you see that people, not only are they not interested, but they're more often going to be really triggered and get angry at you for bringing up said evil, you have to figure out new tactics and new ways to approach it and really kind of keep your emotions calm because you're not actually helping anything by being that passionate about your opinions.
Well, and I think a lot of times the facts are something from outside of their worldview, and that they have a protective measure so they don't have like, it's like a breaker in an electric system. If it gets like too high, of amperage, a current going through there too fast, it shuts off, it trips, right? In their minds, they say conspiracy theorist. I'm sorry,
Right.
what you're saying does not fit into my worldview, and I'm not willing to expand it to account for some of the evils that humans actually do to each other. And so they're
Right.
working on a limited set, and you're offering them information that exists. Here's the evidence. Here's the people saying it themselves. But it doesn't fit into their narrative, which goes back to, are we learning narratives, or are we learning based on inquiry and finding answers and evidence in reality? Because the mainstream media will have you learn by narratives. Here's a story, and they're all going to tell you that story, same parts of the story. And then inquiry would be like, well, here's a clean slate. What evidence can we put on the board here? And once that evidence is on the board, I'm going to play a call later tonight that comes from a police scanner channel. Once it's on the board, how do you get it off the board? Unless somebody says, well, that was mistaken, or here's the confusion, there's a contradiction that has to be resolved. And that's also part of journalism and asking questions. So they try to smear with conspiracy theory, but there's two ways you can handle that. Like, is this the only thing that challenges your worldview, or are there other pieces like this that you would also say conspiracy theory, right? Because then maybe it's a worldview, they got it locked down, it's no longer accepting new information or evidence. That's an issue. And there can be the other issue is they're doing the work of the CIA, because they came up with the phrase conspiracy theory in document 1035-960 concerning criticism of the Warren Commission report, which goes back to the origins of truthers. There were no truthers in the 30s, 40s, 50s in America. It's only after they assassinated the president of the United States in such a way that left so many questions, and so much was redacted and censored, that people want to hypothesize and fill in those blanks in the puzzle. What is the answer to X, Y, and Z, right? And I think there were a lot of leaders in this country who were asking questions, right? So bringing this up to a couple years ago, I heard you on the video, and you know this, but for the benefit of the audience, Benny in January of 2020 is like, Bill Gates, the Johns Hopkins Foundation, and World Economic Forum had an exercise meeting in October 2019, and it was exactly like what's going on in China, and looks like it's coming here. And I was like, oh, Benny, you're being so cavalier, man. And then, because it's not the first time I've been incredulous, I went and fact checked you. I looked it up. And I learned so much that night, because I got into that 5-hour Center for Health Security playlist of Event 201, right? And so you've spent a lot of time over the years helping people like bifurcate that meaningless conspiracy theory drivel and get focused on what is the actual substantial pieces that can actually be studied and are meaningful to understanding this conundrum, right? E.g., how not to be the conspiracy guy anymore. Right. Because I don't want to talk about, secret bases on Mars and, all these other things that's like pretty far out there. And even if that's true, how does it really affect what I do today or tomorrow? Right. Whereas these other things, hey, if you got a kid and they're, under 5 years old, they got 20 million shots waiting for the experimental concoction they didn't test anyplace else except in the biology of your kids. That's what they're looking to do. Like, that is something you should know about, maybe protect yourself against or be educated about. Right. So how do you focus on keeping people back to, like, let's bring these ideas back to reality, and let's not get too far out on meaningless, abstract things that would not change how we have to live our lives?
Well, I mean, I really try to focus on the relationship itself, and I try to be okay with having a different point of view and having a different opinion, and being okay if that is still the case at the end of the conversation. And I find that the less committed to changing someone's mind you are, and the more open you are to just suggesting things as ideas in a non-threatening way, while establishing a trust with the person you're talking to, so that they know that even if you differ on certain things, your priorities are the same, or at least similar. You can really make progress in conversation with people. I'm all about the nuance and the reading the room, just knowing who you're dealing with and understanding your own intentions, and understanding who, what you want out of a conversation, why you want to bring the points that you want to make, like, understanding goals and intentions and conversation and encounters and confrontations is so helpful. And having fun too. I mean, I like to bring up ideas as just ideas and not commit to them. I mean, we were even talking about this at dinner tonight. The idea of fun, like it's so unfortunate that people are so demonizing of conspiracy theorists, because going down the rabbit hole can be really fun. And it's like not fair to deny people that experience, to wonder what life really is and what's really going on, and take an official narrative and say, okay, well, what else could this be? Like, why is this? Why do I believe this in the first place? And what else could there be beyond this? Like, it's so much fun to just use your imagination and contemplate literally everything. And that's your birthright. Like, life is, no one really knows what's going on in life. We don't really know why we're here or what we're doing or what's happening. And to be denied your ability to question it all is so unfortunate. So that's why I like to keep it fun anyway, because it's fun to think about what it all really means and what's really going on. I mean, that's kind of a tangent, but
well, let's dig into that for a second, because like the difference is between people who assume and then people who are curious and look for themselves. And the curiosity leads you to learning. And if you assume in this culture, you're just going to be at the beck and call of that media establishment that's all connected, giving you the same narrative everywhere multiple times. Repetition doesn't make it true. Repetition just makes people believe it's true. And if it was truth, they wouldn't have to repeat it so many times for people to get it, right? So there's a lot to that. So the people who are assuming, we're going to treat them a little bit different than the people who are actually curious and asking questions, right? Because let's say you meet somebody who assumes everything they see on mainstream media is actual, factual, and all they need to know about these events, right? You're at a hotel, you're at an airport, you're at a dinner party, new interesting person, and you get through the conversation that they don't know X, Y, and Z, and you would like them to know about that event, that person, that place, that thing, right? Common thing in conversation. Do you lead with that by telling them all you know about that topic? Or might you lead with a provocative question, right? If they're talking about the economy and the debt and this sort of stuff, and well, who do we owe the money to? Might be better than trying to bend their ear about the Federal Reserve and G. Edward Griffin right away, right? So how would you teach people like how to handle that situation with more nuance and like dexterity?
Right. If you're really in tune with the person, or the room itself, if you're really listening, you'll find your way in. You have to be able to improvise and maybe not go in there with a game plan. Go in there open-minded. Go in there just to have the dinner party, And if something comes up and you feel like, oh, this is something I'd like to chime in on, listen to what they're saying and hear, and, find a natural way in without being the guy who just, drops the bomb on the table for the sake of dropping the bomb on the table. People have access points, and if you maneuver accordingly, you can find your way in and not ruin the dynamic. But everyone, there's so many tactics you can use, but listening and having empathy and really hearing the person you're talking to it's almost cliche to say, but you can't stress it enough, because we are so bad at listening, and we're so bad at social dynamics, and we're so bad at jumping to conclusions and also having hubris about our opinions. It's so important to be nimble and be willing to not say some things based off of the dynamic, because there may not be the perfect opening, but there may be an opportunity elsewhere to say something else. But yeah, it's really about being in touch with yourself, being self-confident and open-hearted, so that you can read the room and not be dominant and also not be passive and afraid. But yeah, I have hundreds of ideas and tricks for basically every situation to help you talk to anybody in any situation.
Well, let's say it's a room, people, and it's this topic of vaccines for kids under 5 years old, right? And you might be in the minority and surrounded by a majority. What type of techniques or tactics do you recommend to people in those situations? Do you try to like argue? Do you try to give them all
Don't
your
argue.
evidence?
Never argue. I would encourage people never to argue. Arguing doesn't solve anything.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what the topic is. An argument.
No one's hearing each other.
And well, you're also grappling with egos. I mean, this is a weird thing about our culture, or I guess people in general, maybe, is that we don't like being, we don't often like being taught by the person we're talking to. We don't want to be seen as ignorant, inferior, uninformed. You know, we don't want to be seen as stupid in the eyes of the person that we're engaging with. So we put up a, whether it's subconscious or not, we put up a front against it. So you're like, people are guarded against you teaching them something. And I also, I get asked a lot of these hypothetical questions. And I think the problem with hypothetical questions is that they're hypothetical. Like every situation is unique to that moment. So what you would do in that situation, if you were like the, you know, lack of a better term, anti-vax person in a room full of pro-vax parents, I would suggest you really, really listen and, you know, find a way in and find the least aggressive approach and the most like, you know, neutral, find your neutral point, find your center point in you, your neutral point, so that you're okay knowing that, you know, be grateful that you know what you know, and even find the sympathy towards them for them not knowing it. So you can go into it with like, hey, you know what, no matter what happens here, I'm going to come out of this and be okay because I'm so thankful that I have the viewpoint that I have for my kids. But listen, and then ask questions like you just said. I mean, drop a question in there in a way that is really you wanting to know the answer from these people. You know, a lot of times we have the advantage in conversations with, I hate to say it, like that kind of person, because we've actually looked into these things. And a lot of times people don't, they just have like emotional responses and they have a downloaded opinion. So you actually have an opportunity to get them in touch with their own opinions. Like they've never actually thought about why they think what they think, but you have the opportunity to open up that door and allow them to explain themselves. And you might learn something, and how they react and speak, you know, dictates how you're going to respond. And you don't have to be confrontational. You can be totally cool and still show, you know, still represent your thoughts and your beliefs or your opinions in a way that's non-threatening and in a way that can hopefully plant a seed in their minds that may germinate at some point.
Yeah. So let's go back to the ignorance part. People don't like being talked down to or instructed or educated a lot of times unless they ask for it, unless they have the curiosity, right? So just because you can, like Aristotle said, condemnation prior to examination is the epitome of ignorance. You can say in your mind, hey, that person's assuming and he or she is condemning and they didn't even look at the thing they're condemning. That's ignorant, but you don't say it out loud. And so first refrain from that. And then the thing you can do in these situations, like in the hypothetical, I tend not to address hypotheticals because they lack the specificity and detail that you actually need to get to real problems and solved, right? But hypothetically, in that situation that you gave, that it's a minority of an unvaxxed or anti-vax perspective surrounded by the invasion of the body snatchers type of scenario. It's like just everyone's like, you must do this, right? I think your best case scenario is this. You're not going to present any evidence that's going to change their mind because they didn't necessarily make their mind up with evidence. That's a question that can be answered with your questions to them. Your best case scenario should be go around, ask questions of all these people who have made this very important decision, find out what they know that you don't know, because maybe they're right. And if you ask everybody and none of them had, you know, looked up the inserts or went to the definitions and looked at the SEC filings where they say it's a gene therapy and they worked with DARPA, right? It came from DARPA, right? So all this sort of stuff. If you find out none of them know that, then you can say, okay, I'm making a good decision. But if there's something that they know that you needed to know you didn't know because you're politically separated, that could hurt you or your family, right? So we should go into these situations and say, look, I want to understand what they know, that they think this thing is the official story and not, you know, all these other contradictions that aren't ever accounted for in any of their official reports, right? So that's a like on the spot. You got to be conscious. You got to be curious. You have to be able to navigate these situations. Otherwise, you're going to be hitting icebergs everywhere you go, especially in this society. There's a lot of people who never question anything. They hear it and they think that's knowledge of what really exists in the world. And that creates like a shriveled worldview because they don't know how to go out, look with their own five senses and come back with, okay, there's some reality, there's some contradictions. I need to learn more to resolve these contradictions and come to knowledge of truth. Right.
Exactly.
They can't do that if they're fighting. That's my point.
Right. And I don't think intending to change someone's mind is ever a good intention. Unfortunately. Doesn't mean you can't change someone's mind, but that's an intention that's not going to get you anywhere. And I focus on intentions and goals a lot based off of my 20 years as a theater actor. I really studied to be a classically trained actor, not, some jerk who just moved to LA, but like I really trained to be an actor. And what you learn in acting training above everything else is you have to know your character's motivation and your character's goals. What is their goal? What is their goal? What is their goal? And that's what makes a performance interesting, going from A to Z, watching a character unfold. That's why if you go to the theater, you're going to be engrossed in a certain actor because they are aware and they're following their character's intentions. So you can apply that to life. Like, what is your intention in any situation? Why do you want to talk about said subject in a room? Why is it important for you to talk about this? So that why is it important that this person hear your point of view on this? Really understanding your own intentions and your own goals can help to clarify everything about what you're wanting, and then you can proceed. I mean, and if you go in there wanting to change someone's mind, it's too general and it's too arrogant. But to go in there saying, I would like to ask some questions or drop some seeds that'll help this person hopefully some point see a little more of the picture. Yeah.
Only we have the right to change our own minds, and we shouldn't be trying to change the minds
of other people. It's weird. Like, I make this point all the time. I have 10 years worth of content online. I have comedy, lots of poetry, but I have a really hard time reaching my family with it. My family, my close family, my parents notwithstanding, but the rest of my family, they don't watch my stuff. They don't want to watch my stuff. They don't want to hear from me about conspiracy type stuff. They don't want to watch my comedy. They don't want to hear my poetry. They don't care. But my work can be used by you to reach your family. It doesn't make any sense, but that's how it works. So you have to be really, so again, if it's coming from you, it's going to be trickier. But if you can use like a different approach of standing next to information, you can really make progress, not owning something. But it sucks that that's reality, but that's the way it is.
Well, it's learning how, like, if you're seeking to introduce some topic to another person for their betterment, right? And you have good intentions behind it, it's still not your job to like directly communicate that. You could say, hey, I watched this documentary. I found it really interesting. Would you mind watching it this week? And we'll talk about it next week before we, do basketball or whatever. Right. And so it's more of there's an external thing outside both of us that we could both look at and like talk about. And then it doesn't have to be like direct conflict between people's maybe undeveloped ideologies on both sides.
Appeal to ego, say like, hey, I recognize that you're somebody who really likes to gather the facts, gather the information before coming to a conclusion. I read this thing that, got me a little worried, and I would love to have your eyes on it. Can you read it? Would you mind checking this out? Be honest. Let them figure it out, and then let them come back with information that then you can have a conversation about. But make them feel, if they're worth it enough to you to like bring up these topics anyway, then you have some level of respect for them. Really honor that respect and give them the chance to really experience the information that you've experienced to help you come to a conclusion, or at least to an idea, and let them do the same and then talk about it.
And then there's a lot of people who have the issue of older family members, right? Somebody might be in their 50s or 60s. They're trying to explain to their 90-year-old mom or dad that's like hooked up to an oxygen machine in a wheelchair what's going on with globalism or, any of these topics, right? So I've always tried to follow this rule and recommend it to others who ask such questions. Like, look, There are loved ones that you only have a limited amount of time with on this planet. So try to make their day brighter, bring some joy into their life, right? Talk about something they are passionate about. Don't try to make it about you. Try to make it a beautiful moment. And it could be about, sports or whatever they're interested in, right? If your dad or grandfather only watches like sports and that's his whole vocabulary, then go into that world, watch some clips and be like, hey, didn't so and so have a great hit at the bottom of the ninth? Or you find a way to bond, because that's the most important part of the human experience. All these other ideas of whether or not you agree on politics, like it comes down to freedom or slavery. Can we all just not be for slavery and would be good on all these other issues? Because on the going back to that vaccine topic, if you start back at the top, it's like I'm a parent, you're a parent, we hold these opposing views, but we both love our kids more than anything in the world. And we're both trying our hardest in this crazy world to do the best for them. Can we agree on that? Yes. Great. So we're not like complete assholes to each other, right? Let's bond on that thing we do have in common. And now explain to me how you went through your decision-making process step by step. Send me all your references. I want to know all about it. And then after I review that, I'll send you mine. If you agree that you're going to go ahead, I'll take the time and put it all together. And then we can find out what we don't know, because out there, those hundreds of companies in that mainstream media diagram, they are not looking for answers for you or your family or mine. So maybe we have to do it together. Maybe we can't do this by dividing and conquering. Maybe we have to go outside of these stereotypical hyperbolized extremes that they've fed everybody and get back to basics of actually, let's meet other human beings, talk to them like human beings, have respect, and have conversations that exchange these perspectives, these points, these contradictions, and try to get other perspectives on it. This looks to me from my perspective like this. What do you see from your perspective? Oh, it looks totally different. Let me come over there and see it. Oh, I agree. Or I don't agree, but let's take this journey together and find answers, because we're not getting them from the mainstream media. That's
yes. And you said something really important there. You said, let's meet and talk about it. I think that it would all behoove us to communicate less with typed language. I think social media is one of the main reasons why there's so much division or divisive communication. People are afraid to have the conversations, even on the phone. So they resort to emailing, commenting on Facebook, and it really destroys our empathic communication with each other. So if something's really important, an important topic for you to talk about with someone you care about, have the conversation outside of social media, because social media is there to create a barrier between you and the person. And you really would, you're better off talking to them and you care about them. So take the time. And a link sharing war on Facebook will get you nowhere.
It never has, never will. All right. So I wanted you to come on tonight. I know it was short notice, but I wanted you to come on because there's like a lot of polarity being built up in the public out there. And people are, I don't know, civil war or world war, whatever they're trying to drum up. It's not peace. It's not freedom. They're trying to pit everybody at, to where each side's not even going to listen to the argument from the other side anymore. They're just at that point. It's like a boiling point, right? So much hypocrisy has gone on, and only so much will be, withstood or tolerated, I guess, right? So I'm looking at it as we need to up our human interactions every week. Let's take the opportunity to go down to the store that's local that you need to complain to or whatever, and have a conversation with a human being. And maybe they're short staffed, or maybe they just like something happened, right? Don't just like, hey, you're not doing the right thing. Like people can get heated. I've noticed like just, from people around me that like when you call customer service at like local businesses, people are on their last thread. Like there's a lot of people canceling stuff, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. So I'm just saying like, for people to have that extra capacity for patience and like lack of frustration to be their human self in these situations and kind of rise above it, that's like a learned skill. It's a practiced skill, and people don't pick up on it too casually, too easily. And a lot of them quit and just become introverted and stop dealing with people altogether. Right. So it's like having these muscles, but they're atrophied because you haven't used them a whole lot or had the occasion to, because social media lets you say everything you need to, and then there's no consequences. There's no real interaction. It's just people yelling at each other. Right. So if we learn to have these conversations in person or, across the internet with the help of Zoom, these sort of things, I think the chasms don't get as deep and as far apart so quickly, right? This is like the glue that needs to mend this situation is the upping of our communication. And so because you've been successfully teaching people how to do that, I wanted you to share some tips so that people don't have like these frustrations turn into aggressions. Because as we head into the political season, they're just going to turn it up to 11, spinal tap it, just go to 11 and things will get crazy again. Crazier than they are now with monkeypox being stopped by band-aids and stuff. That's pretty crazy. If you went to yourself 2 years ago and said, here's what we got in 2022 for you, you'd be like, no way. It's a false reality.
I don't know if I would or not. I might not be that surprised, to be honest.
Yeah,
I might not be, because nothing surprises me really anymore. I'm always just shaking my head like figures.
All right. But see, I don't shake my head. I'm still surprised on a regular basis because I'm incredulous. Like that can't be going on. But then I look it up. And if I wasn't kind of like that, I don't think I'd learn nearly as much
anymore. I mean, I get surprised. No, I don't know. I actually don't know. I guess I waffle between surprise and not. I don't know. It's
like we know they have the capacity, but I'm surprised that we're at that point where they're doing that already type thing.
Yes. Yeah. And it's usually more just so astonishing to me that more people aren't just seeing it. But then again, I fluctuate back to the other point of view, which is like, well, actually, maybe people are seeing it. It's just that we have literally zero representation in the mainstream. And I mean, zero representation in mainstream. So I think that it's likely that there's more people, who are sensing something is amiss here beyond what the narrative is that we're perceiving. But what was there a question there? I'm sorry.
We were lamenting the downturn of the 21st century in people's knowledge of reasoning and communication. And then making problems out of that gap.
I'm basically teaching people how to be dexterous in conversation. I have the course Parrhesia, which I essentially pitch as a way to acquire the skills to be able to navigate any conversation. And that's accurate. And that is a good assessment. That's a good overview of the course, but it's so much more than that. It's really how to embody who you are and use your voice in an empowered way so that you can walk away from any conversation, any encounter, any confrontation, feeling like you represented yourself well. And even if there was a misstep, even if there was a failure in that moment, you can walk away thinking, okay, I recognize that as a point where I can improve rather than, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that, and think of it as a failure. So how to constantly be moving forward. And the best thing of all, how to find that confidence in yourself so that you use your voice in a way that you end up attracting the right people to you, not just how to talk to the people who are, dense, but how to actually represent yourself well. So you're not afraid and that people are drawn to you like a light. You're a beacon to people. And then you start seeing that everywhere, there are people similar to you. And I mean that. I firmly believe that there's probably at least 10 people within 10 miles of you, at least, wherever you are. Doesn't matter how remote you're living, who are questioning things in a similar way to you. You just have to find each other. And you can do that by expression, with expressing yourself through your communication. And well,
I noticed that your representation of your offering is all about inspiring people forward and not trying to push them with fear. You're not saying, hey, don't mess up your engagement presentation, or don't mess up this, or what would it cost if you fail the presentation at work? Like that
when you can recognize that one of their tactics is to make us feel small and insignificant and alone and crazy, it can damage your self-confidence. I mean, I think our self-confidence, there's a war against confidence right now, among other things. So we're feeling really small. We're feeling like, we're not where we should be in life. We're not who we should be. We're not doing the things we should be doing. We're like, we don't have any friends. We don't have anyone to talk to. Like all these, I shouldn't write this song because no one will want to hear it. I'm not that good anyway. All this self-defeating stuff. And once you can recognize that as being a tactic against you, it can really create a shift in your life. And you can say, well, hold on a second. I mean, I only live once. I'm guaranteed to die. The only thing it's guaranteed is I'm going to not live through this experience. So what's the point of being hung up on this self-doubt and these barriers that keep me from really experiencing my own self, my own potential? And then when you can get your confidence up, you'll find that your maneuverability is much greater. And that when people don't want to hear what you have to say, you don't care as much. And you can actually then speak more fluidly and more coherently and make more progress in conversation when you're just like owning who you are. And last thing I'll say is when you can just, there's a piece that I found in the last couple of years of accepting of evil. And I don't mean that it's okay to let it run rampant. I mean that I feel like it's seeming likely that a part of the human experience is grappling with evil. There are people, there's always going to be people, no matter what generation, what time you're living in, that are bloodthirsty and that want control and want power and will be tyrannical and will use tactics to try to obtain more power and more control. And when you can acknowledge that on like a spiritual level, it's freeing. It's like, oh, wow, okay. So how do I make moves to outwit that, to outsmart that? How can I make myself not as, not so much of a target for that? And then how can I help others not fall into those traps as well? But yeah, that's been a huge one for me. It's just like acceptance. Like, this is a part of the deal. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing whatever I can to solve it, to dissolve it. But there's always going to be someone out there who's determined to, control you.
I'm going to throw you an idea for a video. It's called The War on Confidence. And I think, because that was a nugget that you just dropped right there. I'm like, I think if you put that video up there and you let some ideas develop around that seed, it'd be a strong message. People are looking for that today, because it's like the next FBI leak for domestic terrorism won't be those symbols of liberty. It'll be like people who are self-reliant and conscious and confident and who might pose a threat or ask questions and just.
Where does confidence come from, though? It's really a war against the mind, right? It's a war against consciousness. When
confidence is at the other end. If you start out from fear, which is a common starting point for all people, and you progress forward with learning and get some skills and experience, confidence is on the other end of that. That chain.
Exactly.
And they don't want you anywhere near that. They want you stuck and paralyzed in fear and believing whatever they're telling you from an authoritative source.
Two things manifest: confidence and agency. Then people will have the will to want to act in the world, not only express what's they hold as being the truth and as they see it in their local community through their own lens, but also then the ability to actually like physically create change, create businesses, create solutions in their local community and for their friends and family and so forth. So taking away that, create situations where what are people suffering from? Depression, identity crises, lack of self-confidence.
Stuff that Pfizer sells you pills for.
Yeah, exactly. How convenient.
They profit from the doom. All right, so Benny,
I've never said the words war on confidence before. That just came up. Here,
spontaneous.
It's a war for your mind. It's a war for your mind, and like you said, consciousness and
war on confidence.
And it's
you
can't
get confident unless you get conscious.
It's it's really a war against our innocence and our it's the target's always the children. I mean, I have a whole thesis that we're all part of a giant child abuse cult, and we just have different levels of like abuse that we're all grappling with, whether it's poisonous food or poisonous medicine or
layers and layers of trauma,
camps, schools, exactly, whatever it's, but we're all sort of like coming out of this. They get us from all angles.
I think,
and when you do that, when you target the kids, then your confidence is going to be severely, they want you to be trained and to be obedient and to think you're small and think you can't accomplish much. And if you do accomplish something, it's not practical. It's just like this bag of money that has no path towards getting. No
meaning behind it.
Yeah.
No meaning. And like, that's also when people wake up, I think the ego gets interjected with that, because finally they have some sort of sense where they can learn and do things for themselves. So they project the worst element of power control onto then trying to wake up others, which we all went through. Like, I've been through that stage you were describing earlier, and Rich described in those hypotheticals, we've all been there. It took a lot of time, conscientiousness, and patience,
Right.
diligence and prudence to be able to have like to bite one's tongue in those moments with close friends or family. I think it's the number one comment, in fact, when I host town halls is we get people coming in the community asking like, it's just so hard for me though. That they will say, I'm just throwing out like people come in and say that was so hard for them to be able to sit there and not hold it in, and we're trying to come up with different strategies and different tactics around those strategies of like how to, okay, don't explode. I know there's a lot, especially when you just wake up, it's so much novelty to it. It's both exciting and terrifying at the same time. And I don't know, it's just trying to find ways to, everything you said is correct, but I think the one thing people want simple solutions, and what you said is exactly what needs to be done, is exactly what I've sort of engendered as part of my own disposition over the years of making terrible mistakes with friends and family. But it's hard to find a way to fast track that for people just waking up and find ways to, because I think they want a simple solution in regards to what's a heuristic I can follow. Well, the heuristic is asking questions. Get people, you said something so brilliant. People aren't even at a point where they're asking their own questions. They haven't really even engaged their own imagination, their own thought process. Let's get there first. Like you want to talk about like project management. Like that's a whole separate project. Let's get them like engaged, like their own rational mind.
Operation
first.
Mockingbird.
And then
let's
we'll
just
get
take
up
one
to
step outside the narrative to the point. Oh, wait, the CIA was controlling the narrative. Let's just start there for a moment. Operation Mockingbird, right? And then let's take some steps beyond. What else is out there beyond the narrative? A lot of interesting things. All right, Benny, if people wanted to check out what you've done for other students who were probably in the same starting point with scarcity mentality, learned helplessness, probably a good bit of like having been traumatized through life from getting bullied, getting talked down to, you become introverted, you don't feel like you can speak your mind, you might not know what you want to say in certain situations in life, you want to get past that social awkwardness. Where do you help people with that ailment?
Well, I think just being around other people who are also going through something similar is such a healthy therapeutic first step. So I created the Parrhesia communication course as a direct result of COVID-19 and the division that was occurring as a result of the extreme polarization. And sorry, we have a bunch of dinner guests who are leaving right now. But so I'm there to catch people that you're talking about, but the people who are really, because I know from experience that the bigger the event, the more likely people are to snap out of their trance. And when you snap out of it, you're going to be that person who's like, oh my gosh, I got to tell everybody. Well, now there's so many landmines set up that you're just going to get cut off if you do that. So I'm there to catch you. Hold on, okay. I know, I understand your impulse. I'm going to catch you now. And then you're going to be in a room with other people who are going through something similar. So you're immediately caught into a community of people who are also like struggling with the same thing you are, of knowing how to communicate. And that can just be so, you learn how to talk about your ideas, these controversial like thoughts and opinions with other people who have similar controversial thoughts and opinions. And that can help you talk about them. You can actually figure out like, more in a more articulate way, what you're feeling, what you're thinking. And now you're feeling like, okay, I'm not so crazy. Other people understand me, and you can go out into the world and engage.
And likewise, you can hear an idea that you might hold and you hear someone else express it and you say, wow, they sound crazy. Maybe I better double check my belief on that. Am I sounding like that to other people too? Right. So there's a chance for reflection and introspection all mixed up in there. Hubris
will destroy anybody. And I'm so sick of hubris. I don't care if you're right. If you're an a-hole about it, I'm probably not going to listen to much of what you have to say. I'm so sick of arrogance and people being so sure of how right they are, no matter where you fall on the opinion spectrum. So that's one of my big things. Like really just like get off your pedestal, because you don't know everything. None of us do. I mean, I have so many ideas, so many opinions over the years that I was like, this is the thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I felt that way. So you have to give people the same kind of leash. I mean, you never know when someone's going to snap out of it or when they're going to come around or whatever. And so you don't want to be the person they remember as like, that guy was so mean to me. You want to be gentle, because we're all not only are we going through this experience that the mainstream is giving us, but we're going through our personal like life experience, which is full of illness and pain and our bodies and our people, our kids and our parents and all this life stuff that is, really significant, that we take for granted, that we forget that people are going through that at the same time we are.
I think people should consider it a form of wealth. If you have the patience and politeness to interact with almost everybody you interact with, like come across at the highest standard you can, like bring them some joy, bring them some encouragement, bring them some optimism, a kind word, a thank you, a holding of the door. All these things matter to other people. And it's something that you can definitely internally afford. If you just get your mind out of like negative self-talk or observing and judging other people, if you quiet that all down and just observe the situation and say, how can I be of service and help people? Good. Oh, Benny's telling his guests that he's about almost.
I'm telling them to wait
That's...
1 minute so I can say goodbye before they leave. It's my parents and two of my
friends. Get to it. Go ahead and pitch your site. Thank you for coming on to help the audience get some tools and techniques.
Always a pleasure, Benny. I greatly appreciate. By the way, one of the best interviews I've ever had.
Oh,
conducted
thanks.
by you, so
you
I really
great.
appreciate that.
You were the class loved it. But I am starting season 4 in 2 weeks. If anybody wants in, it's the art of communication, and it is it's on season 4, which I think proves that it's a success. I wouldn't have a season 1, 2, or sorry, season 2, 3, or 4 if it wasn't a success the first time. But yeah, if you're struggling with communication, if you're wanting to find your voice as an artist, if you are, just wanting to represent yourself better in any confrontation, situation, conversation, then consider signing up. And if that's not for you, then I also offer one-on-one coaching, which I'm finding to be quite in demand right now. People are seeking counsel. So if you want some one-on-one counsel from someone who has been around the block a few times when it comes to conspiracy and conversation, hit me up.
If you want into season 4 of Parrhesia, at the basic level, you got 2 weeks. If you want in at the higher levels, Benny sells those out almost every season, right?
It is already sold out.
It is already sold out. All right.
The highest level, the one-on-one tier, but I can offer one-on-one coaching that's independent of the class.
All right. Well, that's good. It's a good sign of popularity when the highest tier sells out first consistently each season. So 2 weeks, you guys, if you're on a fence, check it out. You got lots of testimonials and people who've gone through the course that represent the common ailments that a lot of us who went through public schooling have. And as a former introvert, I also can appreciate Benny's tutelage on how to be a better public speaker and occasionally.
I'm an introvert.
MC.
I'm an introvert.
I'm still learning.
I am too, Benny. Very much so. I have to say, I've directed many people.
I've taught myself to be an extrovert, but I'm an introvert, and I can help people who are struggling with that as well.
And I must say, I've directed many people to your course from the town halls that are interested in rhetoric, because I teach the trivium, but I don't oftentimes focus. I'll teach some of the principles.
It's more
of
the
classical
grammar and the
rhetoric,
logic.
but I get into more of the So I sort of use your course as like way once you graduate to that if you're interested in rhetorical expression and how to gain confidence, agency, and your ability to express yourself and take action in the world. Because once you have confidence in your ability to express yourself, now you can actually do things. You can network, you can meet with new people, you can actually get things done, and that's the key. And all of a sudden, life goes from meaningless and depressive to something meaningful and interesting and entertaining, and always something to wake up to. So,
right. Not to sound pretentious or cliche, but I this is one of the first things they say in the class. The biggest obstacle on your path is not the New World Order, it's you.
Yeah,
it always is. And you're right. It's not about conquering fear. It's about taming fear so that you can still take action in spite of your own fear, namely your own self-doubt. And that can be applied to conversation or taking action really in any regard.
So don't get dragged around by your fear. Learn how to tame it, ride it, go faster toward your destination. Benny, thank you so much for taking time away from the family. You got a growing family. You got visitors. Thank you so much for helping us out.
Thank you, Benny.
Giving us some better
thank you guys. It's been a pleasure.
Good to see you, Benny.
You too.
Catch
Take
you
care.
Have a good night.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.